The 0-1 Detroit Lions will host the Chicago Bears in Week 2 action. Now, here's a stat for you. Teams that are 0-2 historically have only a 11% chance to make the NFL playoffs. So history tells us whoever loses this game is not eliminated, but technically they're going to have a really tough chance getting into postseason play. Now, let's start with Detroit because there were expectations about this team heading into this season after last year. It was such a disappointing end. First seed in the NFC, 15-2 overall, and they just laid an absolute thud in Week 1 against the Green Bay Packers on the road. Now, why is this game so concerning in Week 1? Because they got out-physicaled up front. In the trenches, their interior of the offensive line did not look like what it looked like in the last couple of seasons. Defensively, we thought Tyleik Williams, the first rounder out of Ohio State coming to them, would add an element of physicality. Aidan Hutchison, production-wise, we need to see that. Week 2 against Chicago, the trenches need to be better because what do we know about Ben Johnson? Well, he loves running the football. Chicago ran the ball pretty well against Minnesota, over 4.5 yards per carry. A lot of that production, though, coming from their quarterback, Caleb Williams. When we talk about this rivalry, it's really exciting because the NFC North has been a historical one. The Chicago Bears and Detroit Lions, they don't just dislike each other, they hate each other. We talk about Jim Schwartz, right? Ndamukong Suh, Jay Cutler, and some of those matchups. This rivalry is embedded with blue blood teams that, for the most part, have been very competitive. Now, has this series been close in recent memory? Not so much. Detroit has dominated because they've had better football teams. They have been better coaches. But now Chicago brings in the hotshot, the football genius, Ben Johnson. Well, did it look like that Week 1? Not so much. There were a couple of coaching mismanagements. The offense overall stalled in place, but it sure looked good the first drive of the game where Chicago went right down the field with Caleb ending the possession in a rushing touchdown. Need to see a lot more of that. What you also need to see a lot more of for the Bears is Caleb Williams looking more comfortable in the pocket. He did not look settled throughout the day, was missing open receivers in the middle, intermediate parts of the field. He also left the pocket a little bit too early and tried to extend plays. A lot of what we saw at USC, some of the stuff we saw at Oklahoma in his first year, stuff that we thought Ben Johnson would coach out of him. Now, is this going to be solved in one offseason, one season? Most likely not. But when you're heading into a game of this magnitude, when you're 0-1 already in the conference, 0-1 already in the division, there are very high stakes, and Detroit does not want to be embarrassed again like they were in Week 1. I believe that Detroit has the edge in this game. Why? Because of the trenches. Now, I know Chicago redeveloped the interior. They went and got the All-Pro in Joe Thuney, got the center in Drew Dalman, but Detroit has been that team. Up front on the offensive line, Penei Sewell has been one of the best right tackles in football. I think he has the edge in this one going up against Montez Sweat. We saw impressive offensive line play from Detroit in previous seasons against Chicago. I think that is a good indicator that they can continue that success in this game. The Bears struggled to stop the Vikings' run attack late in that game. Once they were out on that field more, when the offense was not able to continue possessions, we really saw the Vikings lean on that run game, and Chicago struggled to keep up, and it led to Minnesota with a cascade of points, 3 straight drives ending in touchdowns. The Detroit Lions score in a very similar way. They just have an avalanche way of operating as an offense. They'll just hit you with 14, 17 points before you even know what has happened. Jared Goff, a lot of people are talking about his performance as if he didn't play great. Now, I know he didn't have a whole bunch of passing yards, but he was efficient, 31 of 39 passing the football. We just need to see him attacking further down the field. Now, we got to give the Lions a little bit of slack going up against that front. Week 1, understand that the offense isn't going to click necessarily the way it will a couple of weeks later in this season once we hit the middle of October and you are really hitting your stride. That's why it's tough to have divisional matchups where the intensity meter is just ramped up to an almost playoff-like atmosphere. I like Detroit, again, because of the quarterback play, and we know what we have in Jared Goff. We've seen it the last couple of seasons. He's been a top 10 quarterback. All the stats in every category support that, except the rushing statistics. That's where you can bank on Caleb. That's what he will need to do. If the Bears have any chance in this game, they will need Caleb at some point to pick up first downs, to be effective with his legs, a lot like we saw him do against Minnesota in week 1. Now, let's talk about the weapons instead of the trench play of the quarterbacks. Let's talk about the weapons, because not a lot of teams have more weapons than the Detroit Lions. What was weird last week was the lack of vertical attack, like Jameson Williams on the outside. Were Green Bay's defensive backs really that good in separation? No, it was more so back to the trenches in the sense that Goff just didn't have time to let those routes develop. So how do you attack Chicago? Well, they might not have their nickel corner in Kyler Gordon once again. As of the recording of this video, his status is uncertain. One of the best corners in the National Football League, Jalen Johnson, he missed time against Minnesota when we saw the impact of the Bears stop in Minnesota late in that game. Throw enough darts at that dartboard and you are at some point going to hit a bullseye. That's exactly what happened for Minnesota. So Detroit, I would attack that Bears secondary as early as you can. Without Jalen Johnson or without Kyler Gordon on the field, even if they are playing, you would assume that they aren't quite at 100%. They're just needed to get that on the field because they are such pivotal pieces of that secondary. Now, again, let's talk about the run game, because there's not a lot more explosive players in the world, in any sport, than Jahmyr Gibbs. You got to get the football in this guy's hands because he's such a difference maker. He got 9 carries. I understand that. Only 19 yards. That can be difficult trying to establish a guy. 10 catches, though. I mean, I'm trying to remember a time where a running back had 10 catches in a game for any team in the NFC North. You might have to go back to Matt Forte back in the day, effective coming out of the backfield. But that balance, right, between him and David Montgomery, the Thunder and Lightning, this can work against Chicago, whose defensive line was truly the biggest question mark of that team heading into this year. What will the pass rush be with a couple of new additions on that side? Now, for the Chicago Bears weapons, they've got it all. They've got an array of weapons that even rivals Detroit. They don't maybe have the star power of a Gibbs or an Amon Ra St. Brown, but Odunze, DeAndre Swift, DJ Moore, they certainly have the talent, and that's why the expectations for the Chicago Bears taking that step, being somewhere close to a playoff team resembling it, which they did through 3 quarters on Monday night. That's what the expectation is for fans and for people around the league. Now, it's one thing to expect it, and it's one thing to go out there and do it, especially at a place which is what I like to call the fast track, because that's what Ford Field is. And that's kind of how you get established as an offense. It's not that shoddy Chicago Bears grass that they have out there where you could lose anything that you throw out there. No, this is the turf where you can get some rhythm established. I think that's exactly how you attack Detroit coming out early. We saw how susceptible they were to the passing attack from Green Bay last week, how Jordan Love was able to hit everything. There were guys roaming free, wide open. He doesn't have the biggest arm in the world. He doesn't have the fastball that a Rodgers or a Josh Allen do. He seemingly floats the ball in good locations, but Matt LaFleur schemed guys open very well on the levels of the defense. A lot of that had to do with how Detroit knew they had to respect the run. So Ben Johnson, you're coming out, have to continue to run the football, and off of that play action, you have to keep Caleb out of 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 in the shotgun, or then you let the dogs loose. You let Aidan Hutchison loose, and they start to really lean on you. A guy like Brian Branch, I'm just going to throw out for Detroit because this popped in my head. I was really disappointed in him. We're talking about an all-SEC type player, Alabama, coached by Nick Saban. That sequence of events last week with Tucker Kraft is unacceptable, and Dan Campbell, I'm sure, let him know it, or other guys on the team know. You can't have those type of actions from one of your best players That cannot happen against Chicago on Sunday. This game is too important. So he is going to have the responsibilities, right? He's going to be in the slot a couple of times. He's going to have to face DJ Moore, Rome Odunze. Both of these guys rotate and work out of the slot. There's the new addition of Zacchaeus, Luther Burden, the second-round pick. A lot of these guys rotating in, as well as the tight end. Chicago's got Kmet and the first-round pick, Colston Loveland, out of Michigan. I'm sure a lot of you Detroit Lions fans love and know Colston Loveland very well. Won a national championship for your Michigan Wolverines, I can confidently say. So all of these weapons, you need a distributor, a guy that can be a point guard and get the football to them effectively, on time, on schedule. So that's why I like Detroit in this game, because I think that they will be able to establish enough pressure. The defensive line will play well, and they will put Caleb Williams in those third and longs that Chicago won't get enough yards on first, second down running the ball, and the offense will look a little bit like it did in the second half. As far as what a prediction is like for this game, I like Detroit to win it. Lions are favored by 5.5. I don't think they cover that number. I believe they get the win 27-26 at home. It's tight. Maybe comes down to a late field goal. This is a well-fought game on both sides. You get to see some of the really good creativity from Ben Johnson, but it is not enough, and the Detroit Lions prevail at home. A deep exhale from Lion fans, and they get a little bit of positive momentum into their season. 0-2, though, for Chicago would be horrible. 2 divisional losses, that would be a bad start. Again, this is a very tough schedule. What I have to say is that this whole season isn't going to be over in the first couple of weeks in September. They've got the early bye week 5, so it seemingly looks like they can pick up some rhythm later on in the year. It's just tough when you have statistics working against you for either one of these teams that are really talented. These are very good teams on paper, not just on paper for Detroit. They've shown they can get into the playoffs and win big games. Didn't do so last year in the playoffs. But nonetheless, 2 talented teams. It's going to be a great battle. We're looking forward to it. Let me know down below in the comments who wins this football game and why. Certainly interested to hear your feedback, whether you agree with some of the game plans and where I think that this football game is going to go. I want to hear from all of you. Please subscribe if you have not already for more football content in the future. We make NFL, college football content every single day. We're going to keep doing it as we barrel forward with the new college and NFL seasons that are off to incredible starts. So I appreciate you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Thank you. Best player in college football.
That Georgia and Ohio State game, New Year's Eve, is going to be a classic.
Josh Blunder. Hi, everybody. I'm Josh Blunder. To the 40, 30,